Welcome to round 2 of the Ural Trucks Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship, the iconic Baberspan 250, held in the Northwest Province. Get ready to sit back and enjoy the dusty and muddy action as competitors fight it out for the overall and class honours in the toughest and biggest off-road series in Africa. 2 categories, 10 classes, it's all action ahead. All this excitement and action is brought to you in proud association with our series sponsors, Ural Trucks and Fila Africa. What makes the Baberspan event so unique, over and above its long history in off-road racing, as well as being the longest surviving event, has to be the scenic setting with the pun as the backdrop. More than 30 race crews were eagerly setting up their pits for the day in the designated service park referred to as the DSP. Here, last-minute checks are the order of the day, and while some are trying to settle their nerves, others take the time to catch up with fellow competitors. But make no mistake, friendly as they may be with each other before the racing starts, out on the route, there is no mercy, no quarter given, and everyone is racing for the win. You could say that this was the calm before the storm, before 31 angry racing cars were sent out on the qualifying prologue. With the high safety standards in place under the auspices of Motorsport South Africa, vehicle safety checks are also completed during this time to make sure everyone complies to the prescribed standards. Ahead of the competitors lay a tough route comprising of a qualifying loop, otherwise known as the prologue, of 76 kilometers, followed later in the day by 2 loops of 118 kilometers for the main race, making the total race distance a challenging 312 kilometers total. Prior to the start of the qualifying prologue, competitors all attend a compulsory driver's briefing. Vital information regarding the race and the route is shared here with competitors, all in the interest of safety and fair competition. Amendments and additions are made to the road books, the navigator's most important tool, used extensively to ensure that drivers stay on the correct route and also to warn of any impending dangers. Stay tuned as we get locked and loaded, good to go for the first bit of action, the prologue, coming after the break.
The road ahead, it twists and turns, and the sun beats down and it burns, but I keep
Centrum Active helps to support multiple health benefits in just one tablet. Centrum Active. Live life at 100%.
Welcome to another episode of Auto Mundial, where this week we have the latest AMG crossovers from Mercedes and large SUVs from Ford and Audi.
We also have the latest electric Mini and the adorable Honda E.
That's Auto Mundial, only on Ignition, DSTV Channel 189.
Welcome back to the Ural Trucks Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship, round number 2, the Baberspan 250. With spectators getting ready for some jaw-dropping racing action, the question was, what lay ahead for the drivers? They knew the kind of terrain they were in for, but did they know exactly how wet it would be, how dry it would be, how dusty it would be, and firstly, how everyone would line up after the prologue? Someone had to draw first blood. We were going to wait and see who was going to be the man to open up the road. The dubious pleasure of opening up the road belonged to Heini Stumpfer in the S number 5 Toyota Hilux entry, after drawing position number 1 in the customary top 5 draw for prologue start positions. The experienced Stumpfer in his Class S production vehicle for highly modified production vehicles with engine capacity of up to 4 litres was partnered by Franz Koch again. Coming off a well-deserved class win in the opening round, they were hoping for more of the same. Unfortunately though, the pair encountered problems along the way, causing them to qualify in a lowly 14th place overall. All eyes then on the main race charge for them, as they would no doubt try and plough their way through the pack. Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner were off next in the FIA spec Nissan Navara, pushing the Nismo-powered 5.6-litre engine, Bucky, to its limits. Ernst and Henry competed in both the national and regional championships last season and continue to do so once more in 2020. Not having to open up the road as they had to at the first race of the season certainly played into their hands, as they posted, at this stage, the fastest qualifying time, putting them first on the road come the main race later on. Brothers Werner and Leon Mostert in the Class G side-by-side Can-Am Maverick are the defending class champions and were hoping to defend their number 1 plate again in 2020. Their season didn't start off well though, with a lowly 5th place at round number 1, but disaster struck at Baberspan, with broken suspension putting them out of the running as early as the prologue. Stompie Maynard and Adrian Roots started off the season well in the D11 Toyota Land Cruiser, winning Class D for the modified production vehicle's first time out at round number 1. They put their 4-litre V6 petrol engine to good use, putting the cruiser on pole position in the highly competitive Class Ds. Competing as a pairing for the first time in the Ural Trucks Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship, they are somewhat of an unknown quantity. Winning first time out at the Excelsior 250 certainly put the proverbial cat amongst the pigeons. Question is, could they clinch another victory here at Baberspan? Piloting the T16 Ford Ranger entry for the 2020 season is experienced championship-winning Yanni Visser with Donny Marais of Fila Africa in the hot seat. Yanni switched from his faithful Class S Hilux to Class T for this season, not only switching brands but also now a higher class, with a Ranger powered by a Ford Mustang 5-litre V8 engine. Cobus Fourie and Philippe Leroux in the Bat Spec Zero powered by a 4-litre Nissan Navara motor certainly didn't lack speed. What they do lack is reliability, having had some bad luck of late. Competing in the special vehicle category of the series, the pairing are already on the back foot, with a DNF in the first round of the 2020 championship, doing them no favours. Facing some stiff opposition, they gave it their all, but could only muster a second place in Class P in the qualifying for the prologue, meaning that they would be doing the chasing for class honours. Brothers Keith and Andrew McInerney started racing in Class B many years ago. Having achieved great success in the past in the 2-litre special vehicle class, they were now in a Bat Spec 2, also powered by a 4-litre Nissan Navara. The P4 green and white Bat certainly showed early promise, clinching a first-in-class starting position for the main race, which was due to start at 12 midday. Having missed out not entering round 1, they were looking to bag maximum points to aid their 2020 championship aspirations. Carrying the D1 defending champions Lawrence Van Veek and Marnie Roux seemed to be doing the chasing this season. They were as determined as ever to do well. Losing is definitely not in their vocabulary. Running a Toyota Hilux with a V6 engine, which Lawrence has now been running for a few seasons, they have experience, reliability and speed on their side. Add in a sprinkling of luck and the scene is set for an epic battle at the sharp end of Class D. Fondly referred to as Bumblebee, the G4 Calex Sound Higher Can-Am Maverick entry of Glenn Turon and Craig Galvin was still looking for that elusive win. Last time out, they scored an impressive second place in Class G for the side-by-sides, having only joined forces halfway through last season. You could say that they are still a relatively new pairing, and they seem to learn and improve every single time. Navigator Craig is no stranger to winning though, being himself a former regional Class P and overall special vehicle Navigator champion. With the defending Class G champions, the Mostert brothers, having a disastrous start to 2020, this could be Bumblebee's chance to shine. The The G12 entry of LD Erasmus and Andre Geldenhuys was the lone Polaris taking the fight to the magnitude of the Can-Am Mavericks. Together for the first time this season, their approach is perhaps not one of absolute flat out this time, but they are getting the job done. Coming off a 4th place at round 1 after experiencing some issues throughout that race, they were looking for a better showing this time out. Early days, but they seem to gel well nicely, and the Polaris is also an unknown quantity against the bunch of Can-Am Mavericks. Prologue results place them 3rd in class, ready to tackle the main event later on. The D2 propeller center Toyota Land Cruiser entry of Tiens du Toit has last year's Class E champion driver Dirk Putter now in the navigation seat. Quite an unusual pairing, but these two guys only know one speed, and that's flat out. Was perhaps having two drivers the ideal way to go? Having seen the way that Dirk drove his Class E bakkie in the past, it certainly proved he's not scared of speed. Sitting in the navigator's seat, though, is completely different from a driver's perspective, and all eyes were on to see how the performance would turn out. A 3rd place in Class D in the qualifying for the prologue was not to be sneered at, and considering the long main event ahead, anything could and would happen. New entrants in Class S was Jaco Vierse and Gilly Leroux in the S8 Toyota Hilux. Powered by a Lexus V8 4-litre engine, this highly modified production vehicle was capable of mixing it up at the sharp end of the field. However, whilst Jaco certainly doesn't lack speed, what he does lack is seat time in his new bakkie. Add in the fact that this is also a new pairing, they just need time to settle it in and find the vehicle as well as each other. Things went reasonably well in the prologue, but with a slipping clutch towards the end of the qualifying section, they decided to withdraw from the main race, thereby not risking any further damage to the Hilux. Sad luck, but I'm sure we'll see them out in force at the next event on the TIORC calendar. Join us after the break as we conclude the results of the prologue from Baberspan.
This week in Wild in SA, I get to know a really big kitty cat, and I speak to a man that survived after being attacked by one. I also attempt to drive a 45-degree rock in a house on wheels. We drive Swarberg and Robbers Passes, and survivalman Ian talks about when you should stay and when you should go.
Every accident has its consequences. But when a celebrity's involved, the aftershock ripples in ways no one can predict. For the first time ever, the accident is deconstructed, drawing on confidential documents to determine how it happened and who was responsible.
This guy is gonna die from a car accident.
Welcome back once again to the Baberspan 250, round 2 of the Ural Trucks Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship, as we continue our coverage of the prologue that sets up the starting order for the main event. It was the first time out for father and son pairing Martin van Josveld Sr. and Jr. in the A69 Bat Spec 4, having recently bought the ex-Marius Farid National Championship winning car. Alternator problems hampered their progress, and they pulled out of the prologue race to see if they could effect some emergency repairs in the DSP in time for the main event, where they would clearly start way down the order. Off-road racing is truly a family affair, with so many family names competing: brothers, sisters, husbands and wives, fathers and sons-in-law, and many more combinations to follow. Yet another father and son pairing was that in the G13, Louis and son Christian Schlibusch piloting a Can-Am Maverick in the highly competitive side-by-side class. Still relative newcomers to racing, they only competed in a few events in 2019 and missed out on the first 2020 event of the season. They are not there to make up the numbers though, as they have shown good pace but ultimately lack seat time and experience. We're hoping for good things to come for the future for this father and son pairing. More family, this time brothers Michael and Jean de Beer from Lichtenberg in the M&J Motors G22 entry in yet another Can-Am Maverick. This was also their first time racing in the Ural Trucks Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship Series, so they are also an unknown quantity. At the end of the prologue, they surprised everyone by not only posting the fastest time in the Class Gs, but a handy third place overall. Suddenly, everyone was sitting up and taking notice of the brothers, questioning, could they take it all the way come the main event? The S7 twin-turbo diesel Ford Ranger of Stain Viviers was plagued by mechanical and electrical issues of late. He started off the season with new rookie lady navigator Alida Foucher. A DNF in the first round meant starting off the season on the back foot. However, the pairing were determined as ever to do well at the Baberspan 250. All the way from Bloemfontein, they were hoping for a good showing, possibly a podium finish, grabbing good points towards this championship and taking home some trophies. Let's hope their issues are now a thing of the past. With dad Yanni Visser now racing the Ford Ranger in Class T, his Class S bakkie was commandeered by two of the Visser youngsters, that of Chris Jr. and Peter. We're not quite sure how the conversation went in the Visser household, but the end result was now an eager youngster pairing. Could they be a chip off the old block? Early on it was obvious that they didn't lack the speed, but perhaps just a little bit of experience. In off-road racing there's a saying, to finish first you must finish. Pace is good, but so is staying on the track and not veering off. Sometimes the youngsters will just overcook it, but there's plenty of speed and future to come. For Hein Kruger and Albertus Fenter in the D4 Toyota Hilux, they were looking for a good showing. Hein had a superb start to the 2019 season, but the second half of 2019 cost him dearly with mechanicals and issues dropping him down the championship. Could 2020 be the season to get it all turned around? Rodney Cook and Greg Parkin were hoping to put the first event of the season behind them. At the Excelsior 250, they returned to racing after missing a year. The E14 HUD Racing Nissan cried enough when a Conrod went through the block, therefore scoring a DNF and 0 points. Baberspan has also proven to be a tough one for the E14 entry in the past. 2020 needed to be a good one. Class E has consistently had the toughest competition in the last few seasons, and 2020 was once again no exception. New pairing for the 2020 season, Wayne Smith and Victor Fincham had a torrid time in the first of the 2020 season's events. The E16 Toyota Hilux limped back as last finisher, and the two of them were looking for a turnaround in fortunes at round number 2. They certainly have the experience to do well, but off-road racing is a cruel mistress, and anything can and will happen. They needed to do well to bag maximum points for their championship quest, but had a grueling 312 kilometers still ahead of them. Aki and Jandre Kruger, father and son in the F8 entry, have been very fast of late, and when it mattered especially. It seems like they've been racing forever, and the Hilux is just getting better and better. At the Excelsior 250 round 1 of the Ural Trucks Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship, they scored a handy second place in Class F to open up their 2020 account. But the Baberspan race has traditionally taken its toll on competitors, and to merely finish this race, you stand a good chance to be on the podium due to the traditionally high attrition rate. In the second propeller center entry, Dolph de Toy and Roel van der Westhuizen in the E2 Toyota Hilux are always up for a fight for the top step of the podium. This too in the toughest class in the championship. Never backing down from a race fight, Dolph has often been involved in 3 or sometimes 4-way tussles for class honours in the 2019 season. Second in the 2019 championship, they were looking to do one better this season, opening their account with a fine second place at the Excelsior 250 round number 1. Ahmed Jada in the Nissan Hardbody finally shrugged the bad luck off his back which plagued him over the last 2 seasons with a fine win at the first event of the season, winning Class F with navigator Keith Smith alongside. The F4 Nissan showed what it's capable of, And a very happy Ahmed and Keith. We're looking for more of the same, please. Johan Vierser and Jerry Besson in the E5 Toyota Hilux showed great speed in 2019, but reliability was an issue and hampered their championship aspirations. They kicked off the season with a bang, winning Class E at the Excelsior 250. Looking to repeat this feat at Baberspan, things started well when they qualified first in Class E in the prologue, throwing down the gauntlet to the rest of the Class E entries. This was the car to chase. Suez Moret was back in action following some knee issues from last season, with the experienced Jacques Leroux alongside him in the E26 Toyota Hilux entry. The pairing were out to prove what they could do for the running of the championship honours. They started off the 2020 season with a 4th place in Class E at round number 1, and certainly looked to improve on that to go 3, 2 or 1. Hard-charging Johan Besson with Devan Kutsia in the older Toyota Hilux weren't going to stand back for anyone. What the E11 Bucky lacks in pace and suspension, Johan makes up for in, shall we say, enthusiastic driving. Older Bucky or not, they posted the 3rd fastest time in the qualifying prologue, beating some newer models of Buckies along the way. Could they keep it up in the main race, and could the old dog hold together? If it wasn't for bad luck, Regan Austin and Warren Foss in the D16 Toyota Hilux would have none at all. Missing out on the first race of the season, they were going to play catch-up the whole way through 2020, especially in the hotly contested class such as Class D. But Lady Luck had left them once again, and a blown motor called an end to proceedings for the race, and another DNF was just not what the team were looking for. Back once again with their Isuzu to challenge the Toyotas and one Nissan in Class E, with the brothers Ignace and Gerard Duplessis in the E8 entry. Still struggling to get the Isuzu sorted to the extent of becoming serious challengers to the front end of Class E, the brothers more than made up for it in sheer determination and grit. Their prologue was unfortunately not without issues though, dropping them down the order towards the tail end of Class E for the main event. Defending Class B champions Carleen Croshaw and Marina van Schalkwyk, one of our all-lady teams, were looking at great things in the Baberspan 250. Carrying B1 meant there was a target on their back, but they were equally determined to defend their title, come what may. Already picking up problems though in the prologue, the ladies seemed to have their work cut out for them in the long main race that lay ahead. Hot on the heels of the ladies were the husbands of those ladies, Sierfie van Schalkwyk and Arthur Croshaw in the B2 Marco. With the ladies experiencing problems, the guys did catch up to them, and although now ahead on time, the girls weren't going to let them by easy without putting up a fight. That'll make some interesting conversation come the long drive home. With all cars accounted for, we go back down and check out the results to see who was going to be lining up first and last come the main race, with the prologue wrapped. Here's how it all broke down then. Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner top of the charts. They would lead things out, chased down by Yanni Visser and Donnie Moret, with Michael and Jean de Beer doing a great job, 3rd place and fastest of the Gs, just ahead of Stomphy, Maynard and Adrian Roots. Chris Visser Jr. and Peter Visser, after robbing their dad's old Bucky, did a great job to put the S10 up into 8th place, just ahead of Keith and Andrew McInerney. A good job in the Ps for the open wheels. With the crews coming back into DSP, there were certainly some stories to be caught up on.
We at Baberspan today, we unfortunately had a bit of a mishap 24 kilometers into the prologue. Our right front wheel had a fracture in it, and unfortunately, as we were on a straight road and applying brakes, the hub actually just broke off. So that was our DNF for today. But the section that we were on were actually quite a lot of fun, very muddy, lots of water, and the car was, we battled a bit with traction here and there, but it was fun up until the end where we unfortunately had to quit for the day.
Good day everyone, Stein here, I'm from Bloemfontein, S7, me and my co-driver Alida Fouchier. Very nice race, well marked, very wet and slippery, but it's all fun and games, that's why we're here. I want to thank all my sponsors here at my back, helping us to do this, and also our God. Thank you.
So that's the prologue wrapped, and as always, Baberspan is living up to its take no prisoners reputation. Coming up after the break, the main race.
This is Greg Grams. This is his house. He has lived here his whole life, way over 60 years. His house has lots of rooms, filled with all kinds of collectibles. He likes to find the best of whatever he is collecting.
It sounds like a really wild goose chase, but I love it. If there's any chance of getting his car, we have to have it for the museum over here.
His sons Jay and Brian grew up here and now work with him.
Is this one for sale tonight? No.
If they come on the 4th day, I'll fire them.
Bolo, House of Cars.
On the bike show this week, a pair of hugely powerful and massively entertaining V-twins from KTM in the shape of the Super Duke R and its slightly more sensible stablemate, the GT.
Welcome back as we continue our coverage of the Baberspan 250, the second round of the Ural and Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship. Plenty of stories and drama coming back from the prologue, and once again, the Baberspan 250 living up to its take no prisoners reputation. Before the racing, we caught up with BD Terblanche from Fila Africa.
I'm BD Terblanche from Fila Africa. It's the 4th year in a row that we've been a part of this event. It's nice and wet. We're enjoying the day very much. You can see all the cars coming in is full of mud. We're presenting our new truck, the Ural truck from Fila Africa. This truck is a rough terrain vehicle, very durable, and yeah, we enjoy it to be here with you. Thank you very much.
Ural Trucks giving us a lot to talk about, but with the big dog moved out the way, it's up to the race cars to now take center stage, and Baberspan 250 about to get fired off in emphatic style with the big Nissan locked and loaded and good to go. For the Ural Trucks and Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship, it's important to note that the main race is run in real time. In other words, you start in the time gaps as recorded in prologue. This way, the racing is in real time. The competitor who crosses the line first come the end of the race. No calculations need to be made. When the flag drops, if you're the first car to see it, you are the winner. Ernst Roberts was the first to chase down. Then it was going to be Jannie Visser. The G22 was going to be a story to watch with Michael de Beer, and the in-car footage shows us how much work goes on in these side-by-sides and how busy it does truly get when you start attacking and the time starts ticking when you go off-road racing. The G22 were going to be a huge story. We've been talking about how fast those side-by-sides have become the last few seasons, but we're yet to see one take the overall win. Could today be the day? The D11 of Stompie Mainhardt were looking good as well, the first of the Land Cruisers, and then Lawrence van Wyk in the D1. The D-Class was going to be an absolute nail-biter on the championship as well as the category, and the Ds can run the numbers to climb all the way up to challenge for top threes overall. Glen Turon and Bumblebee, what a sight to see that thing in full flight. And they were going to get chased down by the Polaris. We're expecting to see the Polarises get a move on. There's been a lot of talk about maybe 2 or 3 more of these joining the tour come later on in 2020. The Fissers, what a chance to go out, and just to prove my point about how close the time gaps were, round about 10th place coming out the prologue, there is 1, 2, 3 cars separated by 1, 2, 3 seconds, racing straight out the gates. The P44 of Cobus Marie was positioned nicely just outside of the top 10 overall. And the P's, depending on the way that the track is laid out. If it's technical, they can run the numbers, and the early sand sections would have been great fun in the Class P open wheelers. They do tend to sit right on top of all the sand and the roost. They were going to be chased down nicely by Louis Schlebusch, the side-by-side, a very aggressive attack and approach coming in from the Schlebusch crew in the G13. Hopefully they'd be able to hold it all together. And then Heini Stumpfer, remember, he was the man, and this was the car that opened up early in the morning, the first out on the prologue. We caught up with Stain Viviers coming in off the prologue. He seemed to be pretty chipper, lost a little bit of body panels coming in from the prologue. That wasn't going to hold him back though, and they were looking for that consistency that's eluded them in the turbo diesel wagon. Johan Wieser and the Class E's. Now this seems to be one of those races where we do see a lot of the Class E's coming to the front. We're expecting to see something like a 45% attrition rate. Hopefully everyone does make it safely to the finish, but historically Baberspan takes a chunk of the field with only a small percentage making it to the finish to be able to score the points. If you run good at Baberspan, you run good for the championship. The E's were all over each other on the prologue as well. Johan Wieser, Dolph de Toy and Johan Besson were closely matched, and one of the older Toyotas, everyone was going to be cheering for this, the unstoppable Toyota Hilux. Rodney Kirk had been able to get himself into a position to be able to start the event, and this crew were going to be trying desperately to get it all the way to the finish line. The E14 needed to see some checkers in 2020. Aki Kruger and the F-Class. So you can see almost a stock standard bucky. This was going to be bone shaking and spine jarring the whole way through the day. It was going to be a lumpy, bumpy ride for the E's and the F-Class production vehicles. Next up was going to be Suisse Moret, the E26 that had a mid-pack qualifying, and again it was going to be all about the survival. Then the unstoppable Isuzu in the Dupe Civils. That was going to be all about the Duplessis brothers bringing it home for the charge. In the B class, Sifi van Schalkwyk was going to be doing it all the way through. He was going to have to be watching his mirrors though, because the girls would come on. They seemed to have solved their problems, the mechanical that they had during the prologue, and they were going to be in it to win it once again, just to bring it all the way to the line. And then the A69, Martin van Josveld and the Kid were going to be out there charging. The Ural truck and the Feeler boys were out there. Ooh, don't want to hit any of those as we go along. Thankfully, most of the guys have got windscreens, apart from the Class G side-by-sides and the rest of the special vehicles. That would be an interesting situation inside the cab, wouldn't it? The De Beer brothers surprised everyone with their pace, having qualified first in Class G and third overall, running as high as second overall at one point and gaining a bit on the time of the overall leaders. Could this have been the day that the Class Gs took the overall? Well, it would have been, but sadly it all came to nothing due to an unforeseen mechanical issue. Their side-by-side runs two fuel tanks, as with many systems, and the fuel pump, which is supposed to transfer fuel from one side to the other, failed, leaving them stranded and dry. A rather unfortunate and frustrating end to their first appearance in the series, and a case very much of what could have been. But rest assured, the boys will be back, and the pace will be high. The G22 is here and definitely means business. Although competition is everything, even between family members, off-road racing also provides a camaraderie like no other form of motorsport does. The ladies' car B1 managed to make their way past the guys in B2, and they raced like this for the greater part of the main race. Unfortunately though, both cars did eventually succumb to mechanical maladies, and the family had nothing to show for their troubles other than 2 DNFs and a couple of war stories for the big drive home. A big shame for the Van Schalkwyks and the Croshaws, but as with many who will fall prey to the Baberspan 250, they will be back. For Kobus Fourie and Philippe Leroux, they looked good in the early stages of the main race, chasing hard after the McAnety brothers, who qualified well. Unfortunately, their race also came to a halt, leaving them with a DNF, which could prove costly come the end of the Class P Championship. Even at this early stage of the race, the Baberspan curse was in great effect. The McAnetys also had a race to forget. Firstly, they suffered a rollover at speed, But the crew were unharmed, thankfully, and the car was a little worse for wear. They continued on at speed, all for naught though, as they encountered a big rock a short distance into the second of the 2 racing loops, damaging their suspension beyond repair. What a race, and what an event this really is. The Van Jaarsvelds had a bit of a nightmare start to their campaign in the BAT Spec 4. Suffering alternator problems in the prologue, they managed to get that fixed and had to start all the way from the back of the field. Senior is a hard charger, and as can be seen, he took no prisoners, making his way up and through the order to plough the traffic. But all the speed came to nothing, as the pair suffered a low-speed rollover, damaging their suspension in the process, and recorded a DNF. For Ahmed Yada and Keith Smith, they were fired up after their first win at the season opener. Ahmed always showed good pace, but reliability was lacking. With the win under their belt, they were hoping for more of the same, and it clearly looked like it was going to happen. But a front broken suspension part was their undoing. The Baberspan 250 claimed another superstar and would-be winner. Another long day in the office for Wayne Smith and Victor Fincham after they struggled at the Excelsior 250. This time, a DNF though. Wow. One by one they started, one by one they fall. Johan Bassan and Divan Kutsia gave it their all in the E11 Hilux. Never one to stop trying, Johan drove like a man possessed. Perhaps not the ideal way to tackle the iconic Baberspan event, but who are we to tell a racer to slow down? It's not in their genetic makeup. No matter what the strategy is beforehand, when the flag drops, it's all flat out from there. But in the end, Baberspan won. Another DNF. It was starting to look like whoever could make the finish was going to make the money. Make no mistake though, repairs can be made, and the cars will race once again. The Duplessis brothers, Ignis and Gerard, had their fair share of problems throughout the race in the Isuzu. Bouncing the Class E Isuzu around the course, they also became a victim of the conditions and had to withdraw from the race when the Isuzu cried, "No more, thank you very much." Historically, it has been suspension that takes the most pounding in the tough and changing conditions here at Baberspan. Dolph the Toy is never seen taking it easy. He's really become one of the superstars of this tour. He mostly knows one speed, and that is fast. But suspension problems, as we spoke about, hit the E2 Hilux, as can be seen. He tried to soldier on to reach the finish line, but the team gave it their best to get the Hilux across the finish, but it all came to no avail. Baberspan claimed another one. Next was going to be the Visser brothers. Could they beat the untamable terrain of Baberspan? It was the first time out for the pairing of the Visser brothers, both having navigated plenty of time for dad before. Jannie's Class S Bakkie proved a little bit too much for the youngsters. Looking at the cosmetic damage on the Bakkie, they certainly charged hard, but mechanical issues finally put paid in the end to what would have been a great debut and a huge story in the sport. Remember, they grabbed Dad's Bakkie when he jumped across into the Ford, which means they've got to pay the repair bill. Father and son, Louis and Christian Schliebusch, were attempting their first Baberspan 250. Don't know if they'd have made it across to the race had they known about the history, but their pace was good from the outset. They too, like the majority of the field, did not make it to the finish, but they too will be back. This really was turning into a huge story. The 2019 running of the same event, as with the 2018 event, saw huge numbers of cars on the sideline. This was once again going to be the same story of who could make it to the line. Suisse Marais and Jacques Leroux are farmers of this area, so they know exactly what they were in store for and knowing what to expect around the corner. The steady pace, staying out of trouble, paid dividends as they brought home their Hilux as the last of the finishers. Just 13 cars made it all the way to the flag, but more importantly, they took third place in Class E, a well-deserved podium for the pair, who slowly built their pace and knew it was going to be all about making it to the finish to be able to get the rewards. For Aki and Jandre Kruger, it was a similar situation, staying focused on finishing the race, knowing that with the demise ahead of them of Ahmed Jada, the class win was within their grasp, and finishing in fine style they did to take a well-deserved Class F win. And that catapulted them now to the top of the Class F point standings. Not only that, the car was in great shape, meaning the repair bill going forward into round number 3 was going to be slightly less than the rest. After a disastrous comeback to racing at the first event, the Excelsior 250, Rodney Cook and Greg Parkin were relieved to finally see the finish line of the grueling Baberspan 250. They gave the Nissan all it had and soldiered on to the finish no matter what. It was just reward then, as they took 11th overall and a handy second place in Class E. The result bolstered the team, and it was all smiles for driver, navigator, and on the sideline, their very enthusiastic crew, headed up as always by national driver Dave Huddy. So that's the magical guys that made it inside the top 11. Tune in after the break as we cover the top 10, the stars of the Baberspan 250.
We know that perception is everything, so while some might see this, others see this. That's why DSTV is committed to a code of conduct as outlined by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. If you feel our programming is not adhered to this code of conduct, you have the right to be heard. Please write to the BCCSA and remember that keeping your family's viewing habits safe is easy with our parental control function. Just press the DSTV button on your remote. Scroll to Settings and select the Parental Control option. DSTV, putting the control in your hands.
In this episode, highlights from the Essen Motor Show. BMW's hybrid sports car, the i8. Renault puts young F1 engineers to the test. And the Dino Ferrari celebrates its 50th anniversary.
Welcome back to our continued coverage of the Baberspan 250, the second round of the Ural Trucks and Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship. So far, we've seen a massive attrition rate with only 13 cars making the flag. These are the crews that made the coveted top 10. They say a championship is never won in the early stages of the season. The old adage of, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. Whilst this may hold true, the E5 entry of Johan Visa and Jerry Besson have now made it 2 in a row with a clean sweep at Baberspan. Seems that their reliability problems are a thing of the past, and with some of their fancied competition falling by the wayside, they took the well-deserved win bolstering their championship position at the top of the table. Class E is looking strong for Visa and Besson. Yanni Visser and Donnie Murray in the T16 Ford Ranger seem to be doing some gardening in their quest to finish the Baberspan. Seen here carrying some extra weight on the car. This part of the tree has now been relocated many miles from where it originated. There's simply no stopping for something as trivial as a fairly large part of a tree stuck to the front of your car. As long as it goes, off-roaders don't stop for anything. A class win and 9th place overall was their reward for the day after encountering their fair share of problems along the route, the tree being one of the minor ones. Yanni truly showed his form, and great to see the pairing between himself and Murray starting to bear fruit. In their lone Polaris, up against some much more fancied opposition in the Can-Ams, Aldi Erasmus and Andre Gildenays kept it all together in the G12 entry and stayed well out of trouble, not risking anything. They knew that with the rate of attrition, if they got their car to the finish, they stood a good chance to do well. And that's just what they did. A 2nd place in Class G and an 8th overall was an extremely well-spent day at the office. This also marked the highest finish so far for the Polaris entry. The trip from Bloemfontein to come race at Baberspan here was a long one, but not as long and stressful as the day's racing at the actual event. Not a clean run by any measure. The team of Stain Viviers and rookie lady navigator Alida Fouchier finally put the mechanical and electrical gremlins behind them to clinch 2nd place in the Class S and an amazing 7th place overall to match their race number. Lucky number 7. This car has been on the national and regional circuits for close to 10 years now, and this looks to be one of their best seasons to date. Matthias de Toy, alongside new navigator Dirk Putter, they slipped and slid their way to 3rd place in Class D in the Toyota Land Cruiser, the unstoppable cruiser. Like all the other teams, the D2 entry found the Baberspan 250 to be a tough event, but in the end, they reached the finish line with big smiles on their faces. Not a too gnarly repair bill, and ready to go racing for the rest of the season. The Land Cruisers are doing a great job at the moment in the Class Ds. And then it finally happened. Having already been 2nd twice, Glenn Turon and Craig Galvin in the G4 Bumblebee crossed the finish line 1st in Class G for an overdue and very well-deserved win, and with a great 5th place overall to boot. Bumblebee was covered in mud at the end of the race, not to mention the driver and navigator who didn't have the luxury of the windscreen, and the no doubt lengthy and tedious cleaning job ahead of them couldn't tear and dampen the spirits down. The win now puts them at the top of the Class G standings, and they are now the ones to beat. Bumblebee is on top. Defending champions or not, Lawrence van Wyk and Marnie Roo found the going a bit tough this season thus far. Although it's still early on, the pair are not having things their own way, but as always, they will keep fighting to the end. They came home from the Baberspan 250 in 2nd place for the Class Ds and a very creditable 4th place overall. That's a great result. and they can build on that for the rest of the season. But they definitely held a lot back just to make sure they could bring the Toyota home. They brought it home, they got the points on the plate, and now they can climb the ladder. Pushing to the limits is par for the course for the new Class D entrants, stomping Meinhardt and Adrian Roots. With a win at the first event of the season, the pair were hoping to follow that up with another win here at Baberspan for the 250. And after the dust and a little bit of mud settled, the D11 Toyota Land Cruiser, they did just that. They won the Class Ds and finished a very handy third place overall. They're now the new leaders in the points table, and they will have a target on their back going forward into the rest of the season. But they're well up for the challenge. In fact, they want the guys to come for them. They like the pressure, and they want to be pushed. That's where they excel. That's where they exceed. That's why we're seeing these as a very powerful championship pairing for the rest of 2020. The drive of the day had to come from Heini Stumpfer and Frans Koch, starting the main race in a lowly 14th place, having had to open up the track in the prologue. They simply took no prisoners and passed, count them, 12 cars on the route to end up second overall and took the win in Class S in the process. If they continue on this vein, the S5 number may quickly turn into an S1 come the end of the season. Great to see Heini back in action after a break for a few years, and it's simply a pleasure to give him his all, and France keeping him well on point. What a great job on the wheel and the notes from this amazing pairing. The S5 is charging hard now as we roll and get ready for round number 3. So to our overall winners, and the winner of the FIA prototype class. Fastest coming out of the qualifying run, Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner went out in pole position on the day, and they never put a wheel wrong. They led from the front after qualifying, and that was all she wrote. The Nismo-powered Nissan Navara never missed a beat throughout an entire 250 kilometers of the roughest terrain this series and the country has to offer. They were never challenged once. A perfect end to the day's racing, considering this was their first time that they had taken on the might of the Baberspan 250. You can win Baberspan, you can win anything. This is going to bolster their charge as they go forward into the rest of this tour and the rest of the tours that they'll be challenging throughout the end of 2020. What a great drive, and the champions of Baberspan for the 250 in 2020. It's Roberts and Kerner. Big smiles and well deserved. No, the screen isn't wrong. That's all of the special vehicles, the open wheelers A, B and P. Not one of them managed to make the finish here at Baberspan in 2020. For production vehicle FIA prototypes, it was Roberts and Kerner fastest. In the Ts, it was Visser and Marais, and Class S was Stumpfer and Koch, winning ahead of Viviers and Fouchier. For the Class Ds, Meinhardt and Roots beat out on Van Wyk and Roux, and in the Class Es, it was Visser and Besson ahead of Cook and Parkin. For the Class F, Oki and Jean-Andre Kruger did a great job to beat out Jada and Smith, and in Class G, the side-by-sides. First win of the season for Turon and Galvin. In the overalls, no surprise to see Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner topping the charts, with Heini Stumpfer and Franz Koch ahead of Maynard and Roots. That was for productions. Overall, that was the top three. We went down into the pits afterwards and caught up with a new winner on the tour.
What a privilege to enter the Baberspan 250, this legendary race. Wow, but geez, check the car out. The mud was unbelievable, but we had a good day, managed to bring it home first, which is a good thing for us.
First time.
First time, first. Yeah, so good day overall. A lot of cleaning to do, that's for sure.
Yeah, what a race. As Glenn said, it's a legendary race out here. Great fun, lots of mud. One or two mistakes, but yeah, that's off-road racing.
The toughest event on the tour is done. We look forward to round number 3 of the Ural Trucks and Fila Africa Inland Off-Road Championship. That's next.